course you did. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's one big story that I've been following that just makes me very excited. I mean, physics gets, the high energy stuff is just so interesting to me. The Large Hadron Collider, that's another developing story. The fact that it was broken and then they fixed it.
Right.
Now it's working, and they're ramping up the firepower. So they're learning all sorts of, they're finding new particles, and they've got this massive amount of data that they're working with. That kind of stuff is awesome. I think the Kepler mission from NASA, which has been looking for extrasolar planets. Yes. Basically finding worlds like Earth-like planets around other stars, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. That was one of your Science Hour topics,
yes,
right?
Yeah, I spoke with a woman from NASA, and she was just wonderful to speak with. She's just had a passion for what she was doing, and it's just, that's one of the things that excites me, is to get to speak to people who not only are, doing the work, but are passionate about it, and they want to talk about it.
Right. So when you are choosing people to interview to have on that show, do you choose based on the person that you're interested in, or are you thinking in terms of a topic and then you try to kind of find somebody within that topic, or is it a mix? How do you decide your show topics and your people?
It's basically the flavor of the month. It's like whatever I'm interested in. It's my show. I'm going to talk to whoever I want to talk to. No,
that makes sense.
I try and, there are certain subject areas that I think are interesting, and so I do a search for people who are well known for whatever that topic is. Other times I try and interview or contact certain people who I just know are good communicators, and they've written a book, or they have a blog, or they've done work on television or something. They're communicating, so I reach out to those people to see if they'd like to talk about whatever it is they do. And then the final one is kind of related to the first, in that I look for newsy stuff. What's happening in the news? What's really interesting? And then I search for somebody that I can get to talk about whatever the timely issue is. So, last year around this time, there was a lot of talk about the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So I was like, okay, let's get try and find people who can talk about, oil science, who can talk about aquatic ecology, who can talk about, what effects that oil spill might be having in different ways. And so I had a couple of shows based on that. And more recently it was I think World Oceans Day in June. And so there have been reports about the state of the oceans, and things are not looking so great. If we keep going the way that we're going, our oceans are not going to stay pretty. And there have been reports that suggest that there might be some dire consequences if we don't change our path, our course of action. And so I had somebody on to Andrew Whalen to talk. I think he's an aquatic biologist at, I'm blanking, Duke University, I think is where he's from. But anyway, had him on to talk about the oceans and kind of the state of things, which is fun. So, kind of find out what's bubbling up to the surface in the news, and can I get a good interview for it? And
So you are obviously, and always have been, passionate about scientific topics. A lot of the people who read Teen Skepchick also are kind of in that place as well, but I know a lot of their peers often aren't, and kind of see science as a drag and boring and that sort of thing. So why do you think teens should care about science? in part for I mean, a lot of, like, as I said, a lot of the audience already does, but when they're trying to get their friends excited about it, I guess I'm just kind of looking for your thoughts on how they might be able to do that.
Yeah, well, I think science itself, let's see. So science answers questions. Science is a tool to be able to, it's a way of thinking about the world and a way of figuring things out. So science itself is exciting. Sorry, I'm going to move my microphone here. Science itself is exciting because it really lets you in to how everything works.
Right.
In terms of, what's going on that, teens might find interesting or not interesting, there are just so many fun ways to get excited about science or interested in how science works. The Coke Mentos experiment.
Right.
Take
yes.
the Mentos, put it in the Diet Coke or Coke Zero, whichever one you want to use. You get this massive spray, this explosion of foam. You've probably seen something similar if you like root beer floats, right? The bubbles that form when you put the ice cream in your soda. Why does that happen? It's pretty cool. I mean, I happen to really love the bubbles that foam up on the top of a root beer float. And then watching that Coke Mentos explosion is just exciting. And there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of danger there as compared to fire and real explosions.
That's true. Can't argue with that at all.
But the cool science you get into, how does that happen? Why do those bubbles form? That's a lot of bubbles. I mean, if you've tasted the Diet Coke after you've put the Mentos into it, that Coke is flat. You have somehow taken all the bubbles out of the soda. How did you do that? You put Mentos in, the bubbles came out. And it all comes down to this two properties. Supersaturation, so the soda has a saturation point for gases. So carbon dioxide, they can add carbon dioxide to the soda, and then they put more carbon dioxide than the soda can normally hold. So it's super saturated. It's not just saturated where it's full, it's overfull. It's like when you eat too much Thanksgiving dinner and you have to open the button on your pants,
Right.
Oh, I'm super saturated with turkey. And then the other point is nucleation. And the bubbles, when you put soda or even water into a glass, you see little bubbles form on the sides of the glass. And those form at what are called nucleation points. And they're just imperfections that allow the gas to chemically grab on and then form a little point where more gas can grab onto, and suddenly you have a bubble. You have this little pocket in which gas can all build up and you get a bubble. Mentos, particularly the original mint kind, that surface is just one giant, it's just a free-for-all for nucleation. It's just imperfection after imperfection after imperfection. If you look at it under a microscope, it's a really rough, pockmarked surface. And so there are all sorts of places for the carbon dioxide to stick to it. And so much carbon dioxide, as a matter of fact, that it just explodes. It happens really fast, and it all happens at once. I mean, and I'm sure there are still physics questions that can be answered as to, and even chemistry questions as to, like, why it happens more quickly and better in diet soda than regular sugared soda. Why the mint ones are better than the fruit ones. Probably the mint ones have a rougher surface.
I didn't know that was true. So.
there's experiments that you can do. Try different kinds of Mentos in different kinds of sodas and see which ones make the biggest mess. These are all, that's science. But when you get down to it, it's just asking questions and having fun with how things work. People cook, right? There are a lot of teens, everybody eats. A lot of people like to cook what they eat. And cooking is chemistry. Everything you do in the kitchen is something to do with chemistry. And if you're using a microwave, that's physics plus chemistry. There are all these things that happen together. And I want to get across the idea that it's not science. It's the world. It's just neat and interesting to ask questions about the world. And like my grandmother used to have this great saying, whenever I'm so bored, there's nothing to do, it's summertime. What am I doing? I'm so bored. My grandmother would look at me and say, only boring people get bored. Yeah.
Ouch.
But that really stimulated me to be like, I'm not boring. Wait, I'm an interesting person. I have value here. So how can I not be bored? Let's go ask questions. What's going on there? And once you start trying to find things to do and entertain yourself, all of a sudden you're asking questions, and that's part of science. It's part of being a skeptic. It's part of being an active participant in the world.
So do you see yourself as a skeptic?
I see myself as a scientist. I see myself as, I have problems sometimes with the term skeptic. And I've talked with Rebecca Watson about this, and I, had conversations with lots of people. There's not a better name. So yes, I'm a skeptic because, for lack of a better term, that's how I ask questions about stuff. I don't just take everything at face value, or I try not to.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to, I never want to be negative about anything, but I just don't want to just take it at face value. And sometimes when I'm taking stuff at face value, I've gotten smacked in the face, and that was somebody pulling a prank on the web. Oops. I should have looked into that a little bit more. Thank goodness there's a community of skeptics. Thank goodness there's a whole lot of people trying to not take everything at face value. I think it's like I said, it's a part of, being an active participant and taking responsibility for your role in society. You can be lazy, and you can just take whatever's handed to you, and you'll do fine. It's fine. Life's fine. It's great. Whatever. But people who do that don't really take responsibility for their communities, for their environments. They're slacking off, and it's not helping anything get better. And so if you look at the world around you and you think to yourself, this could be better, you have to ask questions. You have to.